Hey guys, I'm Sid, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made Gale's quarterstaff from Baldur's Gate 3. This was a fairly simple project for me, so I thought it would be fun to start making how-to videos to show you guys how I make a lot of my cosplays and props. I'm sure a lot of you have also been very obsessed with Baldur's Gate 3 lately, so I'm going to show you how to make Gale's staff that he starts with in the game. This can also be a guide for making any staff-like prop for any cosplay. It's a very, very basic build. So, let's get into it. So let's get started with everything you're going to need for this project. We've got 2 wooden dowels, 1 inch by 36 inches. These candlestick wooden pieces that are going to go onto the wooden dowels. Next, you can use any fabric of your choice, but I'm using my brown faux leather. You're also going to need glue. I used contact cement and some good old Gorilla super glue. Next, you're going to need paint. I have a silver spray paint, a brown spray paint, and a clear coat to go on top of it. You can also totally use acrylic paint if you want to paint it by hand. Lastly, you're going to need a power tool of your choice to cut the wood. I'm using my Dremel with a cutting tool from Walmart. So let's get started. As soon as I started trying to get the 2 wooden dowels together, I realized I was going to need a little bit more than just glue. So I did end up getting a drill, and I'm going to be drilling holes in both ends of the dowels, sticking a rod in between them. Here I am just marking dots on where I'm going to drill the holes. I'm getting prepped to use the drill now. Please, please, please wear gloves when you use any power tools for making cosplays. I have these gloves that I've had for a while, and I always wear them when I use my Dremel or my drill or anything. I also have a pair of old swimming goggles that I use to protect my eyes as well, which I definitely recommend because I've gotten plenty of wood chips in my eyes. So please wear protection when you are using power tools. So we're getting into it now. I've started drilling 2 holes. I will skip ahead and I will show you guys what that looks like. There was a little bit of trouble getting the rod to fit in, but I finally did get it to work off camera. So now we are just using some glue to really solidify that these sticks are not going to come apart when I'm using this. So I'm just using the good old Gorilla super glue and just squeezing as much as I can in there to get this to stick. I set it and I let it dry for a bit, and it came out pretty well, I think. Now we're going to get to work cutting the wooden candlestick pieces. We're putting those gloves on again, and I'm using my Dremel to cut these. I went out to my local Walmart and bought a pack of Dremel cutting tools. It came with 6 of the pieces that you can put on it, and I think it worked pretty well on the wood. You're just going to want to use your cutting tool to kind of saw away at the top of this candlestick piece so that you can have it and just slide it right onto the staff as a decorative piece. Here's the final product immediately after cutting it off, but now we're just going to sand it down and smooth it out. I used multiple different grain types of some sanding blocks that I bought at my local Walmart to just sand down the rough edges of the wooden piece. You can also use your Dremel. I have a few sanding pieces that I can put on that to use as well, so I kind of used a mix of both until I was happy with it. Now you're going to repeat this process 3 times until you have 3 of these nice little rings. Now you're ready to put those rings on. Here I am just gluing the middle one in first, right where the 2 wooden dowels connect. For the placement of the 2 outside rings, you can use whatever measurement you feel like is best, but I just measured the width of both of my hands around the pole, which came out to be 6.5 inches. So I put each ring 6.5 inches out from the middle. Next, I just used a small tube of super glue to glue the ring down, and I repeated the process on the other side, once again measuring to make sure that they were both equal. The final step for assembling the base of the staff is going to be putting these candlestick pieces on both ends of the wooden dowels. To do this, I used glue after ensuring that they did fit on the wooden dowels, and as you can see, I did not cut any pieces of the candlesticks off for these parts. Ta-da! And now you've got a quarterstaff. This is what it looks like prior to painting. I'm really happy with how mine turned out. I think it's going to be a great prop to have when I go to the Renaissance Fair. Now let's move on to painting it. The first step is going to be using painter's tape to cover up the details on the staff so that we don't accidentally paint them brown. Since we're covering up some cylindrical shapes, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get the painter's tape, so it took me a while of ripping little pieces and putting them at just the right angles to cover up all of those details. Finally, once that's done, you're going to want to sand down all of the wood so that the paint applies much easier. Again, I just used those same sanding blocks that I got from Walmart. Now that the wood is ready to paint on, we can get started. I'm using this spray paint from Walmart in the color Satin. So I'm just going to apply it evenly across the wood, keeping about a foot distance between the can and the wood, so that it doesn't drip or pool together. I'm using the cardboard boxes to support the dowels so that I can rotate them fully and spray every side. This helps cut down on the drying time as I don't have to sit and wait for one side to dry and then rotate it. Next, I'm going to repeat all of the same steps of taping, sanding, and painting on the other side of the staff. Once the paint is dry enough, we're going to take the painter's tape off and put new tape around the embellishments and heads of the staff so that we can paint them a silver color. After doing some touch-ups, I let it fully dry overnight before doing a second coat the next day. I'm starting again with taping, but this time with extra care to make sure that everything is covered because I want this to be my last coat and I want there to be no mistakes. Of course, we're going to sand the wood next. A little tip for using sanding blocks is to start with a very coarse grain that's going to break down the wood and slowly move to a finer grain to smooth it out. Again, this is going to be my last coat, so I want it to be perfect. And finally, I'm going to apply that second coat of paint around the entire staff. And once that's fully dry and you're happy with it, we can move on to the next step. The final part of this project is the grip or the handle of the quarterstaff. I'm going to be using a wrapping technique, so you're going to start with whatever fabric you choose and measure out about 1 inch of it. Go ahead and mark down where that 1 inch mark is and grab your scissors, and we're going to start cutting a strip, keeping the strip about 1 inch wide. Keep in mind as you're cutting this that it's okay if the edges aren't perfectly straight or the measurement gets a little bit off. I think it looks cool for it to be more organic and natural. It makes it seem like the staff has seen some battles already. Now, when you're done cutting, it should look something like this. If you have to make multiple strips to cover the staff, that's totally fine. You can just glue them together as you're putting it on. So let's assemble it. As you can see, I already did one side of the staff off camera, and I'm going to demonstrate how I do the second side here. This is just to get a good idea of what it will end up looking like. So we're going to start with some glue and just put a line right at the end of the fabric strip. You're going to put this down right on the edge where the decorative piece is to cover all the wood on the inside. Then we're just going to start wrapping it around and gluing as we go. This is a long, repetitive process, so I'm just going to speed up this video so you can just watch how to do it. But basically, I'm just applying about 1 inch or 2 of glue onto the loose fabric and then just wrapping it around and let it dry before I do another inch of glue. This is a close-up of what it's kind of going to look like in the beginning of the wrapping process. So we've gotten to the end now, and I'm going to show you what to do. Now what you don't want to do is just cut it straight off and glue it down. You're going to want to cut it at an angle. This is so that it seamlessly blends into the rest of the handle. So first I'm going to cut off the excess, but make sure you leave enough to cover the rest of the wooden dowel. Then you're going to start at that bottom corner and cut upwards at an angle that's similar to the angle that the rest of the handle has been wrapped in. Then finally, you're going to glue that piece down. And once that's dried, you are done with this project. I honestly had so much fun making this, and I'm hoping that there will be a lot more how-to videos on my channel soon. So if you want to like and subscribe and comment, and let's make more stuff together.